So welcome back guys to another video on the channel. As you can see, we've got a fancy new camera set up here. Not Valencia today, sadly. As you know, I have, or some of you may know if you follow my Twitter at FrenchFM right there. Don't forget to follow my Twitch right there too. For updates and live streams next week. As for today's video then, it's not a Valencia video this time, that will be out later this evening. In today's video then, we've got a bit of a different one. As you know, every time a new Football Manager comes out, everybody brings out all these 7 wonder kits you can sign for under 5 million. And that's great, but sometimes if you play in the lower leagues or in the championship, like teams that aren't the big powerhouses, some of you that may do so, you may look for someone who can come in straight away and make a difference to your season. So I've gone ahead and found 6 players that you can sign formerly of top Premier League sides who are either free agents or relatively easy to get your hands on. Let's go ahead and find who we can pick up for the championship sides. So as you can see, the very first one we've got for you today is none other than Emmanuel Adebayor. Now for 36 years old, he's still pretty good. Available on a free transfer, and his contract isn't too high. So as you can see, 36 years old, Adebayor is still pretty decent, other than a few of his technicals not being great. But then again, marking long shots don't really matter. His tackling, again, his work rate a bit of a problem. His position is not great, and his stamina is not great. But off the bench, he could still come on and get you quite a few goals. As you can see, he's got good penalty taking, good technique, passing, heading, first touch and finishing, still all relatively decent for a championship level, and even maybe a lower half Premier League player off the bench. His physicals are still quite tidy for a 36-year-old. He's still 30 quick with 13 acceleration. His pace isn't brilliant. His strength is decent enough. And his mentals are still somewhat strong, other than bravery, anticipation, positioning and work rate, as I've mentioned. Not ideal, but a relatively good pickup. And the second of today's players is someone you're probably more familiar with. 37-year-old Yaya Toure. As a lot of people know, he did train with Leyton Orient over the summer. And as you can see, his stats are pretty good. If you ignore his work rate, acceleration and agility, all of them are above 8. The ones that are below 10 are not exactly the most important. Things like positioning, concentration, determination. Again, for a decent wage, I think you could probably pick him up. I think it was about 30k per week. On a free transfer, you'd be daft to turn him down, really. We all know how good he is. He's got amazing 17 passing, 16 technique and penalty taking, vision of 16 and 17 composure, along with a lot of 14s and 15s sprinkled in. He could still definitely do a job for, without a doubt, lower half Premier League teams, and almost certainly for teams challenging for the championship, and maybe even lower if you can attract his name. That might be a bit difficult, obviously. But nonetheless, a very tidy player to pick up. And third on today's list is the troublemaker himself. As many of you know, Mario Balotelli is a free transfer this season after being let go by Brescia after 5 goals in 19 games last season. He's still quite tidy, he's still got his physicals. He's only 29 years old, so his physicals haven't started to decline just yet. He's kind of perhaps in his peak for most strikers, but if you can get the work rate, you can see 5 work rate, 16 work, 7 determination. He's not the most easy to work with, but I'm sure if you were to persevere, you'd be able to get quite a lot out of him with his 18 penalty taking, his strong finishing first touch, and his high physicals of 16 strength balance, and decent pace in the 13s there. Next up is probably one that we are all very familiar with, Jack Wilshere, the former Arsenal player let go by West Ham at the end of this season. My bug there, I don't know if you've noticed that in the career stats. It says he still plays for West Ham until 2021. Of course, we are in 2020. But as you can see, his mentals are still pretty strong, other than him being severely injury prone. He's still got some pretty good stats, 15 passing, 16 first touch. 16 bravery, which is perhaps shocking of a man with such injury history. But all in all, a pretty decent player, and not too expensive on the wages either. Someone that you could pick up for a lower league Premier League side, or even perhaps a championship team, or maybe abroad, as I know a few people have picked him up in La Liga or France, in a game where it's a bit slower and he could maybe flourish. Next up is one for the Liverpool fans who will be very familiar with this name. It is, of course, Maxi Rodriguez. 39-year-old, he's currently playing for Newell's Old Boys. You won't be able to pick him up straight off the start because he's only just signed a new contract. But as you can see, only on $4.5 grand a week and valued at just under 200,000. I think for most Championships teams, you would be able to pick him up and use him as an off-the-bench player. Although saying that, his natural fitness and stamina are still pretty respectable, so he may even be a starter for some teams. You can see there stats just from looking at the colours. You can tell that he's not awful, with very few of his attributes dipping below 10. Still quite high on his leadership, so he could be one of the people you bring in for experience to help you get over the line if you push on for promotion. And pretty high technicals, as you can see on the wing. He's still got a decent pace with 10, which isn't awful, as well as strong first touch, finishing, dribbling and crossing there. And he is probably one of those players that you could pick up as high as the Championships, but even maybe dripping lower into League 1 or League 2, where the standard of player isn't as high. For only £4,500 per week, he could be a tidy little pickup for pushing up the leagues for a season. So next up is one that will be familiar for those of you who have been watching my Valencia save so far, but also those who remember football 15 years ago with one of the brightest young starlets. It is, of course, Alexandre Pato, who recently hit the news, having been made a free agent by Sao Paulo in Brazil, with nearly signing for Birmingham City. Although those plans did not go ahead, so he remains a free agent. But as you can see, he's still got some pretty good stats, especially in his technicals, with decent finishing, dribbling, first touch and technique, and 16 flair and acceleration. He's still a pretty tidy player for a 30-year-old. For those of you who have been watching my save, he has lit up La Liga so far. I think he's on 8 goals in just 11 games. So a brilliant signing, all in all. You can pick him up on the free, of course, and I managed to pick him up for just 33,000 a week, making it a considerably strong replacement for Kevin Gramero, who I sold on £100,000 per week wages. You will have a lot of issues, obviously, as you can see. His mentals are not ideal, his positioning isn't great, but if you use him effectively, whether it's as a number 9 poacher or even on the wing picking up loose balls, that is where I seem to have found the best use for him. And speaking of Brazilian wonder kids, next we move on to perhaps one of the most famous Brazilian wonder kids of all time. That is, of course, former Manchester City and Real Madrid starlet Robinho. Having left Besiktas over the summer after 32 appearances and 4 goals in that time, he is, of course, on a free agent. And as you can see by his stats, he's still got some tremendous stats there, with 16 dribbling, 19 first touch technique and 18 flair, along as well with his 13 acceleration. He could still be a tidy player to use on the wing, whether it's off the bench, but also I'm sure he would be able to rip up the Championship. So along with him only being 36 years old and available on free, you can pick him up as long as you play him on that left-hand side as an inside forward or inverted winger. You can pick him up for just 6,000 a week. Now, for someone who has quite a lot of dribbling prowess, he only wants to be used as an impact sub. So perhaps if you're planning on playing in the lower leagues of England, you'd be able to bring him in on the cheap, and I'm sure he'd manage to lift and get quite a few assists, as well as chipping in with the odd goal. So guys, I hope you enjoyed that video today then. Just something a little different for the start of FM21 while I am currently recovering from a little health issue. Valencia save should be back to normal by now. If not, it'll be back by tomorrow at 4 PM. Don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, follow me on Twitter and Twitch so you can come and join my live streams when I stream next week. Twitter, of course, for the updates, and don't forget to hit that notification bell so you know when every new video goes live. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I will see you later.